Hello, welcome to another destroyer inspection in World of Warships, and we are pacifying Mr. Yang in the comments. We're looking at the Lushun. Um, the Lushun. Lushun is pretty good. Just power level wise, pretty good. To me, not very fun. The Lushun is kind of, in my view, like designed for a player who is not good at gunboats, but wants to be good at gunboats. Because it's probably one of the most hand-holdy, forgiving ships, honestly, in the entire video game. You have railgun, like Russian shell arcs, great range, with range on the captain, 15-3. Um, Amazing concealment, like 5.8 kilometer concealment on this thing is objectively retarded. It's ridiculous. You have a 5.5 kilometer hydro, objectively ridiculous. It shouldn't even get a hydro. It should get no hydro, no radar, no anything. And then we would maybe be looking at a semi-balanced ship. But then it doesn't really have any DPM. So it's kind of like it's got all these survivability features that are designed to hold your hand. But to Wargaming's credit, listen, okay, sit down. I'm going to give Wargaming some credit on this one. They realized how obscene this ship would be if it had DPM. So, yeah, your DPM is quite dog shit. Now, that is HE DPM. The HE DPM is very shit. The fire starting is very shit. But the AP DPM is kind of like demonic. If you get opportunities to get AP full pens on, cruisers, battleships, thick destroyers, or like slightly angled, like 50, 60 degree angled destroyers, like all of a sudden this thing has some of the best DPM in the entire game. It's up there with Marceau and Harugumo AP DPM. And of course you get railgun shell arcs. You also get the improved Russian penetration. So like at 10 kilometers, you have enough penetration to Citadel like Smolensk, the new ship Svea, you have enough pen to Citadel that. You can Citadel things like Minotaur, like around 7 kilometers, right? Like the Russians can. So you have a ton of pen on the AP, railguns, and then crazy like 300,000 base AP DPM, I want to say. So got some AP into that guy, and then we're just kind of trying to bait him out, right? It's kind of the idea with opening up there. Not to get damage with the guns, but to hope that he would turn out to try to get a salvo off on me. So both of these games are going to be semi-interesting. We're always, as usual, showing back-to-back games. I did play 6 in the Lushun today. We're looking at the last 2 because the first 4 were just such insane stomp blowouts, win or loss. I think it was like 5 wins, 1 loss in the 6 games. But the first 4 games, there was like literally nothing to highlight. It was like I think one of the games we won and I had like 28,000 damage and we zeroed the enemy team out in 5 minutes, right? So obviously we're not looking at those. We're looking at the last 2 games of the day. And the Lushun is, I would say, very consistent. It's a very consistent experience because of these handholdy gimmicks that it has. But it does not have that like really high impact gameplay style because the AP DPM, like I said, is amazing, but you realistically don't hardly ever get to use it. There's definitely unicorn situations that can happen and you slam people with the AP, but 90% of the time you're kind of stuck with this very like mediocre, about 200k, a little bit more HE DPM, which is like, I mean, admittedly not horrifically bad. But like something like gearing at close range will literally just outgun you, assuming equal skill, right? Like, and that's where the shell arcs come in. And the Lushun is kind of this very bizarre pile of conflicting gimmicks. Like you have this excellent range, amazing shell arc. So you want to play at range because like anything with remotely okay DPM in the destroyer world will kind of trade you out if they have skill at close range. So, you have, and here, so this guy's going to go broadside to me because he wants to get all his guns off. That's why I'm just already on AP. And I mean, you can see the damage. It's like 2,000 damage every salvo. The salvos are coming every 1 second apart, right? So, and then my golden lion, I was pinging him. hoping he would do what he did. Amazing. He actually started playing the video game and helped me with that guy. Um, the problem with the heal on the Lucian is the amount of time it takes. There's actually nothing special about the heal. In fact, the heal is basically tied for the worst destroyer heals at tier 10 in the game. Its only interesting characteristic is the duration. So like typically in tier 10, destroyers have a 1% per second heal, right? Like Daring heals 1% per second for 10 seconds. Um, and then other ships like Ragnar are 1% per second for 14 seconds, right? And then the Kaba is 1% per second for 20 seconds. And the Lucian heal is the Grozavoy and the Delny heal, but it just lasts for twice as long. But it's kind of basically the worst destroyer heal in the game, all things considered, because it is 0.5% of HP per second, and then it lasts for 60 seconds. So, like, if you run into a ship with comparable DPM and a heal, and it's a fight where you're just kind of both slamming your heads against the wall at each other, most ships can actually kill the Lucian because they basically out-heal you, right? Like, if you fight a Daring in this thing, you start on the same amount of HP. He has a bit more DPM, but the problem is he's going to recover 3,000 HP against you in 10 seconds, right? And then you're going to recover in that 10 seconds. You're only going to recover like 2,000 HP, so, or even less. So you really cannot afford to fight anything without the ability to disengage in the Lucian, even with the heal ready. The heal is amazing at sustaining fire from like battleships and cruisers at medium, long range, where like you're gonna juke most of the shells, but then you're gonna get hit. Because the Lucian is one of the easiest destroyers at tier 10 to hit. You're probably up there with like Sherman and Holland as just like the sheer ease, because you're not super fast, you don't get a speed boost, and then you're basically, Grozavoy Nustrashimi hull. You are absolutely gigantic. Crucially, you're not just gigantic, you are an incredibly long ship, and you don't have a speed boost to speed juke, so like, you get out to 12, 13 kilometers, you can semi-effectively speed boost, but anyone with hands is still going to hit, in their battleship, maybe 3, 4 out of 12 shells on you. And that's fine, because if those salvos are coming every 30 seconds, then that's plenty of time for that heal to tick through, right? But the heal does not like remotely keep you alive in a sustained fight against DPM. That's just not how it works. You also have like a very, very long cooldown on it. So, typically, the Lucian kind of requires long games to get battle impact. That's just kind of the nature of the ship. The DPM is very mediocre. The fire starting is very mediocre. And so you do rely on like a long duration of time. Like, this is not like a Daring where you can pop a smoke, right? And in like just a matter of 20, 30 seconds, you farm 20k damage and a double fire, because the fire starting on something like Daring is like, close to double. I mean, not quite. It's like 50% better than Lucian. But the torps. The torps are absolutely excellent. 11-kilometer deep waters, basically Chungmu torps, and this is kind of a bone I do have to pick with Wargaming, is I don't think there's any justified reason for ships that are pure gunboats to have these kind of torps. Like Gdansk, Lushun, I just mentioned this in Regolo, like Regolo's torps are too good, man. Like, a ship with well over 300,000 SAP DPM, why does it get torps? Why does the Sherman get any torps, right? Why do these ships get hydro? Why does the Lucian get a hydro? It absolutely should not have a hydro. I mean, I just spent a couple of minutes saying that I'm not really that big of a fan of the ship. It has downsides, but like, it has these retarded, in my opinion, gimmicks. It's just really stupid. Like, because this thing's concealment is so insanely good that the hydro has no value in spawning people, right? Like, you have 0.2 kilometers worse concealed than Legma, Gearing, than Shimakaze, right? You comfortably outspot them in like almost all situations, or counter. When I say outspot, I mean counter spot. They see you first, obviously, but then you see them back right away. But like, why are these torps this good? I mean, I want you to think in a situation like compare these torps to gearing torps. Inside of 11 kilometers, they're just kind of straight up better, right? I mean, like Yu Yang, we're probably going to look at Yu Yang fairly soon. Yu Yang against battleships and cruisers pretty much inarguably has the best torpedoes in the entire game at tier 10. And the same is kind of true of Lucian. Like, they're basically, they're 11 kilometers or slightly longer range, but right, you have the same torp power as like a Fletcher, as a Chung Mu. I don't. I honestly don't know what we're doing with the torps on gunboats these days. I really don't. I've been playing a lot of Kleber recently, and Kleber has like YOLO torpedoes, but Kleber is not, gunboat Kleber is not a torpedo threat to battleships, cruisers, and DDs, because if it's torping you, you're probably able to spot it. And I think that like just toning the torps on the Lucian down to like 8 kilometers would kind of bring it a bit into check. I think in a perfect world, this thing would have like 8 or 9 kilometer torpedo range and no hydro. That would be my game design for the Lucian. And then I would honestly even up the DPM a little bit, because like as of right now, the ship's kind of one ability is just being easy to play. And I've said this in videos like about Austin, about Colbert, that being hard to play is not a balance decision, right? And Wargaming clearly seems to think that Lucian being easy to play is a balance decision, right? Because like there's just, or I would like to see this thing maybe have some floatier shell arcs, but then like god tier DPM. Or we could have, I'm not a fan of, small in gameplay decision, but this thing with the exact same characteristics, but Yu Yang shell arcs and the 7.5 radar would also be more interesting. It would be objectively, less overpowered as Smallin because it doesn't have the speed. But I feel like there were so many kind of interesting things that they could have done with the Lucian. And as it stands, you're kind of just like a turret, right? You kind of just like sit open water, and you farm, but not like super well because your DPM and fire starting is quite shit. But then like the investment cost to killing you is so crazy high. I've talked about investment cost on gunboats, right? And the Lucian is a bit less in some ways because people are more incentivized to shoot you. So I actually do think you get a bit more game impact farming in Lucian than some other gunboats, because people do like to shoot you, right? Like if I didn't dodge here, and fortunately, this guy made the tragic mistake of trying to HE destroyers in Bungo, which is never the play. You want to keep the railgun velocity of the AP 9 out of 10 times. But, right, like there you go. That guy, he stayed on the AP like he should have. And the ship is easy to hit, right? It's quite easy to hit. But then it just has this healing. The heals are worth basically the exact amount of HP you have. 3 of these heals is like 26,000-ish healing, which kind of exactly prints back your entire ship. You're not really going to be taking like quad and triple fires in this thing, I would hope. Kind of a reason why Superintendent on the Lucian is like mostly pure bait, pretty much never worth taking. But it is kind of worth taking sometimes. There's kind of an argument to be made with Superintendent, because in situations like this, I'm assuming that I'm going to take damage, right? Like you see how I hit the heal when it was only half efficient, but then I kind of forgot that this guy can't really aim, so I'm wasting a ton of this heal potential, right? Obviously, but this is the problem with the heal, because it's 0.5% per second. You can't like afford a lot of the time to gamble, right? Like if I was on 8,000 HP like I was, and 4,000 was healable, well, what if this Bungo hit 6 shells on me, 7 shells on me, which is very possible if his spotter plane is up, right? Well, all of a sudden I just die for free because I didn't pre-heal, right? So you're kind of baited quite heavily in the Lucian to constantly be pre-healing, assuming the enemy team is competent and will hit you. But then they don't, right? But then here in this situation, that 2,000 damage the CV dropped on me is permanent damage, right? Because I pre-healed. So Superintendent on the Lucian can help you in those situations where you assume you will take shit and then people don't shoot you or they miss you like mad amounts, right? Here we have quite an incredibly intriguing, one of the most intriguing random things I've ever seen. Our CV under zero pressure, instead of just going to J10 or even J1, uh, runs up the middle and suicides. Uh, Lost us the game, right? Like, guaranteed the game is lost. There's absolutely no chance we have to win now because they have a carrier and we don't. We're down on ships. We're down 2-1 on caps, right? 100% unlosable. Or, sorry, 100% unwinnable for us, right? Yeah. There's not. I'm just gonna let it pan out. We're gonna push this gearing, and let it pan out. But so here I'm out of hydros. I'm trying to wait to the last second to torp the GK because I do. You see here, this is the torp line. This is kind of a trick on torps. Is you're looking for the intersection point on torps. If the speed matches, like my speed on my torps is a little over double GK, but his time to hit my torp range is only like a fifth, so that means the torps will reach. As long as the intersection points reach, you can send the torps. And here we go. Their implement apparently felt so bad that our CV lost our team the game that he decided to let us win by losing his team the game. You can see the map. All of us have been spotted within the last 30 seconds to a minute. There's literally zero pressure. There's absolutely nothing. There's literally nothing that is making this guy make this play. There's no pressure. There's no spotting. There's no anything. The gearing is still in the cap, and I'm actually trying to run away rather than push him. And the reason for that is, like I mentioned, a ship like gearing with no gun build actually has about the same DPM with HE that Lushun has. And so what is my advantage in the fight? And there you go, the GK pushed in close enough to hit the torps. So my really only advantage, and truly the only advantage the Lushun really has, the heal is a bit of cope. Like I said, it's mostly good for open water spamming. You do obviously hit it in a DD fight, but it doesn't like keep you alive against high DPM. But mainly what you have going for you is the railguns. You have amazing shell arcs, obviously. So me fighting gearing, and remember he's full HP. I believe he's full HP. I don't think he was hit. So he's got a 2-1 HP advantage, and we have kind of the same DPM. So if I fight him at concealment range, 5-8 to 6 kilometers, I'm 100% losing that. 100. Even with the heal. Even with the heal, I would lose that because the healing is just not fast enough to counteract a ship with even like gearing DPM. So, but if I can take that fight at just like 7-8 kilometers, like 8 for sure, but even 7 kilometers, all of a sudden my shell travel time is so much more advanced compared to something like gearing. Gearing has some of the worst shell arcs in the game. Like all of a sudden that fight is cancer for him, right? So you do have to respect high DPM or even decent DPM bad shell arcs in the Lushun. And then against good shell arcs, bad DPM, that's where the heal can win you the fight, right? So like me fighting a daring, for example, at 6 kilometers, that's a loss. If he's as good of a player as me, that's a loss 10 out of 10 times. But me fighting, let's say I'm fighting a Grozavoy, a Kleber, at like 9-10 kilometers, right? Now all of a sudden he's not doing enough DPM to me to burn through the heal. So I do effectively get like, 33,000 HP in that first initial engagement, which is obviously nutty, right? So that's kind of the math. Or like against a Ragnar, right? Like longer range fighting. Like, yeah, they probably do the same, maybe even more damage to you, but your investment cost in that trade is so much lower. I said this about like daring, really any destroyer with a heal in some of those videos, that any ship that has a heal, the investment cost for trading DPM fights is always lower because you can come back and it's permanently cost you less, right? So like if I had a superintendent or hadn't pre-healed, I would probably be able to get back to like, probably 15k HP. And then you see I've tanked 1.7 million potential. So part of the game impact Lushun gives your team is tanking damage because the raw DPM is not high enough to justify. If you're not getting any torp hits and you're not getting DPM, or sorry, you're not tanking damage, then you are kind of griefing your team because you could just be in like a Marceau with double the HE DPM almost, right? And slinging mad shells. But 6 torpedoes, pretty cool. Got a Kraken. Let's go to the damage received. Not crazy base because we didn't really fight DDs, right? It's mostly just farming damage. But damage received 33,400, and I finished that game on what, 12k HP. So, and that again, I want to stress, was with inefficient heal usage because I pre-healed assuming I would eat shit, and then I didn't eat shit. And I actually did that twice this game, I think. So, yeah, the potential damage received in the Lushun, if you like maximize healing, is quite ridiculous. There's many games in Lushun I've lived on like moderately decent HP with 40,000+ damage received, right? So this is kind of a lot of your game impact because you don't have the DPM to burst destroyers. You have the concealment to spot them, but you're not like a Vamp 2 that can just like burst a DD down in 15-20 seconds, right? You don't have even close to that kind of DPM. And you don't really have the survivability, even with this excellent heal, to trade against ships with DPM. The heal, again, is good for trading destroyers with comparable DPM and shell arcs at medium range. Excellent in that regard. And then it's excellent at open water farming because you can just like, you know, if you're 24,000 HP and a BB hits you for 10k, you just like start healing and then he hits you again for like 5k maybe, but you've already healed back 5k, right? Because the salvos, right? Where it's the salvos that are taking longer to come in, it's not DPM, right? So that's kind of the idea overall with how you get game impact in the Lushun. Now let's talk matchmaker for a second. What are you looking for? Well, in my opinion, you're kind of looking for this almost exact matchmaker that we have right now, aside from the kinds of cruisers. This kind of battleship lineup, like you want in the Lushun, ideally a lot of battleships, because that's kind of how you farm. You farm against cruisers quite horribly. You don't have any kind of improved pen on the HE. You have horrible fire starting, and then you don't have good DPM. So bowing cruisers, you struggle extremely hard to get any game impact against. You're not going to torp them. Now broadside cruisers, all of a sudden you have like 300,000 plus AP DPM. So broadside cruisers you can actually hurt quite severely. So they have Ashima and Gearing. They both outspot me. If Gearing's ledge body outspots me, right, by 0.2. But the thing is, they only outspot you by 0.2, and that's kind of bringing me back to like the Lushun, in my opinion, is overtuned. It's overtuned in like how easy it is to play, and then it sacrifices game impact through how easy it is to play, and that's kind of the exact opposite of the game design that I like. The ships that I like to play are capable of like insta winning you the flank, the game, the cap, etc. But also come at a very high cost for failure, right? So like in this situation, if I go into this cap and get outspotted by Ashima and the whole enemy team shoots me, I'm probably gonna eat a lot of shit, right? Like I'm probably gonna lose mad amounts of HP. But then if I can get away and I heal, then I get to try it again. And then if I get away and I heal, I get to try it again. So like, to me, in this situation, like this lineup, you see that their Svea is on A, right? So there's no radar over here, and it's Ashima and a Gearing. I would just much rather be in something like a Vampire 2. I would. Something like a Ragnar. I would rather be in these ships, personally. Just preference. Because they have the ability to kind of make the fight be won immediately. So I'm hydraing this guy, but he's doing a good job of tucking in on the rock, obviously, right? So I'm gonna try to just push out and get an angle on him. But the problem is like the DPM, right? Like this exact situation in the Vampire 2, this guy would be like almost dead. He would legitimately be almost dead right now if I was in the Vamp 2. And And listen, I'm not trying to say that, this ship should have that kind of DPM like Vamp 2. I'm just saying that when you are forced to perform the traditional destroyer role in the Lucian, when you are forced to perform the cap contest role, the spotting role, and the torpedoing role, um, you don't really have that ability. Honestly, in this situation, even a Marceau, while it would lack the Hydro, would actually probably allow me to have killed that Gearing, because I would just be able to kind of sprint in on him, burst him down instant, and then I would have the speed to disengage, right? So unfortunately, this guy is a ledge mod Gearing, and he's just like trying to use his ass to cap against me, right? And I spot him, right? Again, very good concealment, very, very comfortably counter spotting, even things like ledge mod Gearing. But what's happening? Uh, their Condi has absolutely no life, right? He is shooting me the instant that I am spotted every single time. And crucially, not a single player on my team will ever shoot the Gearing. So this is the problem, is you have the tools, right? Lucian has the tools to spot destroyers, but it doesn't really have the tools to kill them on its own. Um, Unless it's a pure 1v1, you have a heal, you're healthy, and you get to full commit on them. Uh, I mean, this guy is just, again, he's just like backing up to spot me again. He's also, not playing this smart, right? Because he should know by now that I have this really, really good concealment. And he's trying to bait me, like just assuming I'm one of those players who has no idea how to blind fire smoked up DDs. I mean, that's never going to go well for that guy. And as long as I can live here, then I'm back to being unkillable. Fortunately, thank God the Condi whiffed that burst. That could have killed me right there. If he had aimed that a bit better, I would have died. So now, right, we've won the flank. We did a good job. Unfortunately, I'm basically the only thing that's shot the Gearing. You see, we're at like 18,000 damage. So it would have been nice to have a little bit of help from the team. But the thing is, the heal is keeping me alive. But my question to you is, would I need the heal if I was in a Vamp 2 or even a Marceau? I wouldn't have needed the heal to counteract the damage I took, because I just would not have received the damage because I would have killed the Gearing the first time, right? That's the point that I'm trying to get at. The Lucian is a good ship. It's absolutely a good ship, but its anti-DD ability, I think people look at the stats, right? 5.8 kilometer concealment, crazy 5.5 hydro, retarded, objectively retarded game design. I hate it. I hate that it has these tools for no fucking reason. But I think that what costs people in the Lucian, and it's crazy because theoretically you have basically the highest HP pool in the game, including your heals, right? I mean, if you use all heals to max efficiency, you have over 50,000 HP, right? But what I see a lot of Lucian players like first blooding, like dying first, dying early in the game, and I think it's because they are being baited. The suite of utility and features that the Lucian has is, in my mind, almost pure bait. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to contest DDs like I did there. Me ignoring that guy and kiting the flank and trying to farm Wisconsin, trying to farm Loria, right? I would probably be like over 100,000 damage right now. I would probably, feel very good about myself and my high damage. But I wouldn't have really helped my team all that much. And killing the only DD on this entire side of the map obviously has way more game impact, even though you're not really that good at it. And here we go. We get to see a bit of an AP moment. Anytime there's a flat broadside battleship that's like not German or Russian, it's AP time. And honestly, anything even that's angled a bit, like this guy is angled a bit, but because his superstructure, the Wisconsin superstructure, is so big, still kind of incentivized to stay on the AP. Because it just does so much more damage. I mean, this is not building for anything, right? But 1,400 for the HE and 2,200 for the AP. So you gain over 50% more DPM whenever you're on the AP. And because overpens are overpens, right? Overpen damage doesn't change, so every time you overpen anything in the Lucian, it's 220 damage, no matter if they're saturated or not, right? And what's an HE pen in the Lucian? Well, if they're not saturated, it's higher, right? It's like 450 damage. But if they're saturated, all of a sudden the HE on saturated targets just does overpen AP damage. And the fact that maybe a third to a quarter of the AP, even on angled superstructure, will arm, um, there kind of becomes interesting situations with Lucian AP where you're honestly better off shooting even with mostly overpens. On fully saturated superstructures, like if they're already on fire and you're not going to start a fire, the AP is kind of just better, even if it's 60, 70, or worse percent overpens, right? So it's kind of counterintuitive in that regard because an overpen on saturated superstructure is worth the same as an HE pen on saturated superstructure. Now, anything like this Satsuma, he's got a giant 32 millimeter belt that we will pen. Uh, I wouldn't even try for fires in this situation. Truly, I wouldn't even try for it because the target that's accessible to me with AP is like double the size of the HE target. The fire starting is not very good. And I mean, you can see the kind of damage. It's, we're averaging probably something like 1,000 damage per salvo, but the salvos are coming every 1.2 seconds. So it's way, way more damage than the HE would give us. And then now that he's coming in at like a 45-degree angle, we'll probably start bouncing and non-penning on his belt. So going back to the HE starts to make sense again. But the Lucian is just, it's a very like relaxing and chill experience. Now that kind of upsettingly annoying fight against the gearing aside, I stopped shooting the Satsuma because I thought my GK would definitely do like 1,000 damage to him, and he didn't. So we'll just go back to the APs, flat broadside again, and he's definitely going to be dead to like those 5-10 salvos I shot, right? I mean, you see there, like, it's consistent. We're hitting like 1,500 damage every 1.2 seconds on this guy with AP. And that is when the Lucian goes from like very okay at farming to very, very strong at farming. You don't obviously have the improved characteristics of the short fuse, arming threshold, and pen angles of a druid, but your raw AP DPM in the Lucian is about on par with the druid. So on these kind of billboard targets that you pen everywhere, you do become almost like a budget druid in the AP damage output, which is pretty cool. Undeniably pretty cool. Uh, so now this game is pretty much won, pretty much guaranteed won. The only kind of wild card situation is you see down in the C1 area, my Yoshino is brawling a Svea. Now, if he loses this fight, that we would probably lose the game, and he trades. I I'm gonna just straight up say that this Yoshino was our MVP because he got that trade. If he did not get that trade, remember the Svea goes like 46 knots. It would be in B, back capping us within the next minute or two, and all of a sudden this game would get quite sketchy. And this game does end up getting quite sketchy because my team is going to exhibit a classic win harder mentality. You see these battleships without Hydro are rushing at a Shima smoke. We know it's a Shima smoke. He just popped it to try to save his teammate. So these guys are all like just full headlong sprinting into Yoshino torps. They're not waiting. Like this guy is asking for support, but he's just full sending it in. All he has to do is slam on the brakes, come to a halt, and I can get out in front and Hydro for him. But it's quite difficult to support your battleship when he's rushing a Shima with no Hydro ahead of you and not waiting for you. So I'm trying to get to sea as fast as I can because right now I'm kind of thinking like this Wisconsin's dead, right? My GK might even die after him, and I was afraid that the Shima was going to back cap, and I think he probably should have. I think if he had back capped B and then gone to D, might have given his team a bit better chance to win, but kind of a 50-50, it's hard to blame him. Because also, our team is shoving into him, so the temptation to stay and get kills, which would also give them a big point advantage, is very high. But on this kind of HP that I have now, and I do have a heal remaining, I probably will never die to like Loria or Shima. The biggest issue that I have is actually the Condi because he's proven that every time I get spotted, he will switch targets and shoot me. And if I get spotted by the Shima and the Shima's a semi-competent player, aka he's capable of hitting me with his guns, the Shima could easily do upwards of 10 plus thousand damage to me before dying. My heal will bring me a bit back, but like one good salvo from Loria in combination with Shima, or one good salvo from Kandi in combination with Shima, could definitely lose it for us. So I'm torping this guy to go forward, and I'm just trying to wait because I want the cap, so I don't want to open up just yet. But if he shoots like right now, then I'm definitely gonna, eventually open up on him. Just kind of hoping my team would kill him, but you see here he's just healing. He's not going to end my torps because he's just flat broadside reversing to my whole team. Quite interesting gameplay. Um, and so now that we have the cap, I want to shoot this guy because I actually want him to shoot me. You see how close I am to this island? Loria shell time is pretty slow. So I want him to shoot me, and there we go. And I don't think I end up taking any of this hit. Yeah, I don't. So that miss on me, and then the this Condi dude, I'm telling you, I don't know if we have ourselves a matchmaker monitor enthusiast or what here, but that is just insane gameplay. Um, but yeah, that whiff on me from the Loria, probably did save one of my teammates 10 to 20,000 damage. So, and even if he had hit me, it would be okay. I've got the heal right. It's not like the end of the world. My Napoli has decided to full send again. I truly, like, legitimately do not know what my team is doing. Fortunately, my Clausewitz and my GK have finally read the room. They've finally realized, like, we're up on points and we have 3-1 on caps. So all we have to do is just not die and we win the game, right? So they have figured it out. Props to them. The Napoli, the Wisconsin, and the Loria did not, in fact, figure it out in time. But even if the Napoli dies, we still have the point advantage. The problem is there is enough time, right? If they kill the Napoli, that will give them almost a 100-point swing, so they'll be close to even with us on points. And then the biggest issue is if the Condi lives. If my team lets the Condi live and the Napoli dies, right, then all of a sudden that's super, super sketchy. But the GK got a good shot there. So that basically means it's a guaranteed win. And I'm just going to open up on this guy because he cannot one-shot me. Loria Sap, hits for about 1650 per hit. Even if he hits all 8 shells on me, he will not one-shot me. And there's no way he's even going to hit all 8 shells on me, right? So I can just kind of free farm him here with AP. And we're pretty immune. He would probably take 3 salvos to kill me. This is what I mean against ships with longer reload, that the heal actually does compensate. Because right about now, he would be shooting me again, and my heal is only half through, right? So he would hit me for maybe like, 8, 9k, and then I would heal back another 3 or 4k before the next salvo comes in. So you can absolutely utilize the heal to tank in front of people, like even right in their mouths. But the second they have DPM, that's the crucial thing. The second they have like raw damage output and not salvo weight, that is the fucking problem, because this heal just does not give you enough HP back, right? The amount per second is 147. Again, this is the problem with the Russian hybrid line heal. It's a really shitty heal. The Delny has the same problem. It's a very shitty heal because of the rate of damage recovered. But, two overall pretty good games. A bit of a struggle in both games. But Combat Scout, unfortunately, I am not running Sajang Bang. But, like, yeah, getting Dreadnought in a Destroyer is undeniably fucking hilarious. Combat Scout, we'll hop back in the port and we'll talk a little bit about why I'm not running the Premium Captain, although maybe you should. But you see here another damage received, about 33,000. Like, this is your game impact. This is the heart and soul of game impact in Lushun, is receiving damage. I said this about the Kaba. Now, Lushun is straight up better than Kaba. Like, playing Kaba when Lucian exists is like clinically insane behavior in my opinion. Because like Lucian tanks just as well as Kaba thanks to the heal. You don't have the armor, but thanks to the heal, it can tank almost as well. It farms damage like about the same, but then you get 5/8 conceal, a hydro, and amazing torps. Like, oh man, these older gunboats. Kaba really does just constantly cry in a corner against all these newer gunboats, doesn't it? Um, so not super high damage, right? But decent base XP and very good, very good game impact. And a lot of that is down to the damage received. Like, how many times did that Condi shoot me, right? I mean, and it's a Condi. I think he shot me like 7, 8 salvos and he even bursted me once. I mean, think how much damage that is against a battleship, right? It's a fucking Condi. 5, 6, 7 salvos and an HE burst is like 40,000 fucking damage on a battleship. So, and if we go to the receive, we can see how much Condi did to us. Yeah, he did 11,000 to me instead of like 40 plus thousand to a battleship, and then I can heal half of it, right? So, that's kind of the idea. Or like this Loria, he shot me for 6,600 with his salvo instead, and only half of that is permanent, right? So realistically, what he accomplished is he did 3,300 damage to me with that salvo instead of doing like 15k plus permanent to a battleship, right? So that's what you're trying to do in the Lucian. You've got to put yourself in a situation of being shot at, because if all you're doing is farming damage open water, there's way better ships. Like if all you're trying to do is gun farm, Sherman's better, right? Like a ton of these ships are just straight up better at that role. So I just wouldn't try to play the ship like that. You do want to be playing not quite like a pure hybrid, but a combination of when you farm, you want to be shot at, you want to receive damage, utilize the heal, and then you do want to, with caution and a little bit of intelligence and judgment, push into spot destroyers, because you don't have the survivability to tank against good destroyer DPM with a little bit of help, right? Okay, we got ourselves a nice little port bug here. But starting with equipment, I would probably take Hydro Mod. Just don't run it. But everything else here is kind of objectively correct. You definitely want full conceal. Playing this thing without concealment, like, I understand why people do it because they're greedy cucks who want to farm more damage, but like anytime you can get a destroyer down to the kind of concealment that allows it even situationally to counter spot DDs, do you feel like you're hardcore griefing your team by not running it? So we are running full conceal. Prop mod I think is overall better, and then I would just grab Hydro, because if you run Hydro mod and you throw the flag on there, right, you add 20% to this, so you do get like a fairly decent Hydro duration of like 2.5 minutes, which is kind of nice. Captain spec, this is kind of overall optimal. Overall optimal being the key. Now, there's definitely, I think, some caveats to that. Because if we look at the artillery for a second, you'll see that the fire chance is only 5. I think it's only 5%. Yeah, I'm running one flag. So it's a 5% base fire chance. And your fire starting is pretty mediocre. But because you have such a low base fire chance, that means that all you have to do is if you throw on 2 flags, right, and you throw on this improved Da Wrong fire starting chance, all of a sudden you're going to get a 7.5% fire chance. Your fires per minute is going to go from about 7 to about 10.5 per minute. So you can that would be the truly the only other way that I would build into Lucian is I would build into fire chance. Taking AP is a massive cope, and then also the ship is actually like very decent in ranked and low tier clan battles, like up to Storm. It's very good. In that situation, I typically give up the range and go with RPF, and sometimes I even give up the Fearless Brawler and go into fire chance. But if you don't care about the range, and you almost don't need the range. The range is kind of right on that borderline of you want range. I believe it's about 12.6 base. If this was even like 12, 9, 13, I legitimately would not recommend range, and I would objectively recommend a fire chance. But that's why. As far as the captain, we're running Da wrong. You get improved survivability, which is like very questionable on the Lucian, obviously. Pretty much the sole reason I have this is I have Sazheng Bang trained for Yu Yang, and it's a totally different build. Because this captain is kind of like custom built for Yu Yang. It's very interesting because Wargaming came out with this captain about the same time as Lucian, if you recall. And the thing is, uh, this guy's talents, right? Like if we load him up, you see like this is it's an extremely cringe. This build is fine, by the way, on Lucian. Like it's not even bad, but it's super cringe. It's for a radar UA. But so you get main battery reload time if you get Combat Scout. So you're way more likely to get Combat Scout in a Yu Yang, but then if you get Combat Scout, the value of it is better on Lucian. Um, and then this skill is kind of like solely designed for Lucian, right? I mean, it's even based around torpedo reload booster, right? And then emergency supplies talent. This is really not bad, but it's kind of a weird skill on the Lucian. Um, the reason why I think it's a weird skill is like it doesn't really get you that much because all you have on this thing is the Hydra and the heal, and by the time you've received 1.5 million potential in Lucian, you've probably used two of your three consumables in each slot. So again, I do think like this is almost objectively like if the it's such a weird captain because uh, it's like you get this activated on on Yu Yang, but you want the ability on Lucian. You get this on Yu Yang, and you want it on Yu Yang, so that's great. But then here you get this on Lucian, but you want it on Yu Yang, right? It's kind of a strange captain. Pretty much the sole reason this is overall better on Yu Yang, and the build is 100% different. So if you don't play the Yu Yang and you have that captain, I would definitely run it. But I do think, like overall in random battles, this is kind of objectively the optimal build. Like I said, you could make an argument for Superintendent. That would basically require you to drop Fearless Brawler. You would then take Superintendent, and then you could grab like I don't know, Liquidator or Incoming Fire Alert, right? Maybe, and then. In really long games, the extra Hydro is nice, and the extra heal is useless if you're min-maxing the healing. But as you saw in that first replay, I pre-healed twice and only ended up healing 4 or 5k per heal. So then all of a sudden, that fourth heal, basically the sole value that Superintendent has for the heal is it covers when you pre-heal and then don't receive damage, right? But like realistically speaking, I mean the heal gives you back so much fucking HP. I think with the build, it's like almost 9,000 health. Um, it's like almost 9,000 HP. You know, half of pens are healable. So like, unless you're somehow running around on quad fires, you're never gonna maximize use on the fourth heal. 90% of games, even with bad pre-healing like I did, it's still not even valuable. So I do think this is like objectively uh, optimum in the vast majority of games. The armor, there's nothing really to discuss. The turrets are kind of paper, I guess. The turrets do 360, just like Nooster Shimi, which is quite nice. Um, but otherwise, there's nothing interesting about the armor. As far as the ship goes, like I mentioned, you're gigantic. You're unbelievable. One of the easiest DDs in the game to hit. Um, but these torps are just kind of like objectively too good, in my opinion. Um, I don't know why they're this good. I mentioned that they should be lower range, but as I was saying that, I feel like this thing should just get the low. Isn't that the low yang? That's the smoke hydro. It has the same hydro, right? The 5/5 hydro and then a smoke. And the low yang, if I remember correctly, gets like short range OK torps or like 9 kilometer like sea mine torps, right? I'm pretty sure I have that right. Um, I just legitimately think there's no reason that like this thing performs the stealth torpedo role like almost as well. Like almost as well. It's like a Yu Yang if you took the reload booster away. Because yeah, you can't torp at 13.5, but like the torps themselves are kind of like just as good. I don't. They go 11. I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know what we're doing by giving gunboats this kind of torp power. Like that's something that we kind of recognized back in the day, like Kleber, uh, Ragnar, even Sherman to an extent. The torps are shit. Um, Khabarovs, like none of these ships are a torpedo threat, right? Like none of them are torp threats. Yeah, they might be able to YOLO you in niche situations, or like they can't really even YOLO you at all in the case of like Ragnar Sherman. But then we have these other gunboats like Smalin, Gdansk, Lucian, and then like I said, even Regolo. Like there's just no fucking reason these ships have this kind of torpedo power. If you've seen it, most of these cruiser videos I've ranted about battleship design, even the battleship rant reviews, I'm ranting about battleship design, but gunboat design is undeniably like retarded and demented by the standards that it used to operate under. It kind of started with Smalin. Like Smalin was kind of the first gunboat that got like pretty damn good torpedoes. But it was a bit of an outlier, right? Like Smalin was overpowered as fuck, but it's always been a bit of an outlier. But now this is just the standard. Like Gdansk compared to Holland, like Gdansk actually has better torps, they just don't go as far. But like they do more damage and they're stealthier, right? Like Lucian has torps that are every bit as good as Yu Yang, they just don't go as far, right? Something like a Regolo, like I mean, think of the other, what used to pass as a gunboat. It's like Z-52, like Regolo and Alvaro de Bazan, they just have inarguably better torpedo power than something like a Z-52. They're inarguably better torpedoes in like almost every way but speed, right? So I just don't, I just like fundamentally dislike this. And, you know, it's really hilarious because like the only reason that Regolo doesn't keep the YOLO style torps, like what I would like to see on Regolo, I probably didn't even mention it, would be like YOLO torps, but obviously not as good as Paulo Emilio YOLO torps. But then of course, who would complain about that? Well, of course it would be battleship players because you wouldn't randomly like one shot a DD at 13.5 with these deep water stealth torps that hit DDs, right? But then you can't alpha strike battleships with Regolo torps. Um, I don't know, man. I do think these torps are just like way too good for a gunboat that's this easy to play, that is this decent. Um, yeah, I would like this hydro to be taken away. I would like the torpedoes to be like low yang torps or just deep waters that go 8 or 9 kilometers. And then probably a worse reload even. And then I would like to see the DPM up just a little bit, maybe, and to compensate for that. Um, it's really weird ship. I mean, Lucian is definitely good. Um, it's not like dementedly overpowered. I just think it's way too easy to achieve game impact in, way too easy to play. Has all this handholdy shit that's kind of toxic for a lot of ships. But if you didn't get Lucian in the dockyard, I don't think you're like crazy missing out. I don't even play it a lot. Uh, the Lucian to me is the ship that I play when like my teams are always pure dog shit and I can just like farm at medium range in peace and like cope my way into a 100k average plus damage. And but I don't think there's anything like super interesting about it really that you're missing out on if you didn't happen to pick it up. It is a very good gunboat that then somehow gets this stealth torp ability slapped on top of it. I don't know, man. Um, yeah, I don't know. That'll do it for Lucian. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.